Welcome to the Newsome MMA podcast in association with MMA Play 365. I'm your host as always, Newsome, with your co-host John, and tonight we are back to break down UFC 238 from Chicago, Illinois. John, stat card, 2 title fights. How are you doing tonight, man?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. As you said, yeah, stat card, top to bottom, 2 title fights. It's going to be awesome, man. Obviously, before we get started, last weekend we had a Stockholm event. Just wanted to give a shout out to our European guys, Nick Hine, Jimmie, Alexander Gustafsson, who have all retired since the event. Big shout out to those guys for doing some great things on the European and world scene for mixed martial arts.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree anymore. Thank you to those guys as well for putting it all on the line for us over these last however many years, man. So happy retirement to those three. As for this card, I'm really looking forward to it too, man. Like we've already mentioned, we've got 2 title fights. To go with that, we could potentially have 2 title eliminator fights as well. It's a huge card with serious career implications for some fighters as well. But before we start, as always, thank you to all the listeners, followers and subscribers to this podcast. As always, we've got plenty of platforms where you can catch the show across YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. So please subscribe and make sure you never miss an episode. And with that said, let's break down some fights at UFC 238 and we enter the Showtime Fights. The first Showtime fight tonight is in the main event of the evening, a fight for the vacant UFC Bantamweight Championship between the current UFC Flyweight Champion Henry Cejudo and the rightful #1 contender Magic Marlon Moraes. John, are we going to see another champ crowned, or does Marlon Moraes become the new bantamweight champion?
Oh man, this is a fight I'm really excited about. I mean, I saw a few grumblings on social media and things when it was announced. People saying that Cejudo maybe should have fought one of the other guys on this card, Aljamain Sterling or Pedro Munhoz. One of those guys should have been fighting Marlon Moraes for the belt. But I'm really looking forward to this fight, man. I'm really excited to see how it plays out. I'm intrigued to see how the styles match up against one another. It's always interesting to see a guy who's champion at one weight go up or go down a weight class, which we're obviously seeing with Henry Cejudo. So yeah, man, I'm all in on this fight. I'm really excited about it, and I think it's going to be a really entertaining fight as well. Obviously, we've got Cejudo coming up from flyweight, won the belt over one of the greatest of all time, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson. That very close split decision. Followed that up by knocking out TJ Dillashaw, who in 32 seconds of the first round, who of course then failed a post-fight drugs test. So, I mean, Cejudo's riding the crest of a wave right now, man. Confidence is high. He's looking absolutely shredded. If people haven't seen him on social media or anything like that, he's bulked out. He's looking shredded. He looks in fantastic shape. And yeah, man, it's going to be one hell of a fight against a very dangerous guy in Marlon Moraes. Now, obviously, Moraes came into the UFC from World Series of Fighting, lost that close split decision in his UFC debut against Rafael Assunção. But since then, he's gone on a tear. Beating Dodson, Aljamain Sterling, Jimmie Rivera, and then righting that wrong with Assunção and getting the win in the first round in his last outing. So it's, for me, man, it's just so intriguing to see how this is going to play out. Because obviously we know what Cejudo's all about. You've probably heard by now he's an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling.
Is it?
He certainly is.
Okay.
Not many people know that, but he's an Olympic gold medalist. But yeah, I mean, the guy's striking just changed phenomenally over the course of a few fights. I mean, obviously he's got this fantastic background in his wrestling. He can get guys down like Demetrius Johnson, who are known for being super hard guys to take down, and he took him down several times in their fights. And like I say, yeah, his striking style completely changed over the course of a couple of fights, and he's got now this like wide in and out karate stance. We've talked about it before. He looks really quick striking. His striking's a lot better and a lot crisper than it used to be. So he's all round a really, really dangerous guy. And one thing that I love about him is we saw in the Mighty Mouse fight that he had some adversity. He ate a few leg kicks early on, and people were starting to worry how that will affect his movement. And I'm sure that Marlon Moraes will come out because he throws a lot of leg kicks as well. I'm sure he'll come out and try and land something on that lead leg of Cejudo's. But he seemed to just walk that off in the Demetrius Johnson fight, and it just seemed to make no difference whatsoever. He kind of changed his game plan a little bit, and he mixed up his striking and the timing on his takedowns really well. And then following that, we saw him against TJ Dillashaw. Now, I know Dillashaw didn't look great at the weight. He did look a bit drawn out, and obviously his chin probably depleted from the fact that he'd cut down to 125. But you still got to knock those guys out, man. And Dillashaw's a dangerous guy. I'm sure he'll still carry his power 125, and that seemed to mean nothing to Cejudo. He came in there, he was happy to exchange, caught Dillashaw and put him away. And I know Dillashaw complained about the stoppage, but for me, I think it's a very justified stoppage. He knocked him down a couple of times in short succession, and he was hammering him. I know TJ was working for that single leg, but he was getting hammered with shots on the ground. Perfectly fine with that stoppage. Now, Marlon Moraes, I've mentioned before, he's a very tough guy. That only loss in the UFC came against a Sun Tzu, who we know is an elite level guy, elite level grappler. Very close split decision. After that John Dodson decision, then he's gone on just a first round finishing tear. Aljamain Sterling knocked out first round with that knee. I don't like to say anything's fluke in this sport, because it's not. Everything's thrown with some kind of intention of landing and knocking out your opponent. But I think he was going for that switch head kick that he's known for, and he's got a very good switch head kick. But he did kind of land it with the knee as Sterling was coming in. Again, that's something that Cejudo will have to look out for if he tries to shoot for takedowns. And then we saw the Rivera fight, very similar. They stood in the middle, they exchanged for 25 seconds. Then Rivera landed the head kick and followed it up with strikes. And then Asuncao, Moraes seemed to have no real care about Asuncau's stand-up credentials. I know he's predominantly a grappler, like I mentioned, but he's a decent striker. But Moraes just came out there hammering leg kicks. Then he followed that up with two big right hands, knocked Asuncao down, followed him to the ground, beat him up with some ground and pound, mounted him, and got the guillotine. And man, this is so hard of a fight to pick. But honestly, I'm leaning towards Champ, and here's why. I think Cejudo, he looks great at the weight class. Obviously, we've mentioned before on previous podcasts when Cejudo's been fighting that he cuts a lot of weight to get to 125. That must deplete him somewhat, but he doesn't really seem to fade in fights. So I just think that that move up will help him out conditioning wise. I know there is obviously the risk involved in that of putting on more muscle mass and possibly being a bit slower or getting a bit sluggish towards the end of the fight, but I don't think Cejudo will have to worry too much about that. I really don't. I think he was cutting from such a large weight to get down to flyweight that he I think he's just got shredded rather than put on much particular weight or anything like that for this fight. So I think he'll be the quicker guy in there. If he can get in and out, and if he can mix in those takedowns and take Moraes down a couple of times, I think he can cause Moraes some real problems. Now, obviously, Moraes is going to have the power advantage, I think. He's going to have that power advantage in his hands, those kicks, and his knees. But if Cejudo can keep his movement up, keep that in and out striking, that karate style, and then flurry, then like I say, mixing some takedowns and drag this fight out into the later rounds, I think it's going to be a real close fight, and I think it's going to go to a decision, and I think it's going to play out very similarly to the Demetrius Johnson fight, where it's real back and forth, could go either way. I think Moraes will land some heavier strikes. I think Cejudo will land maybe more strikes because of that in and out quick style, and also throwing a couple of takedowns. If he can't take Moraes down, then it could be an even longer fight, and that decision could sway towards Moraes. But going into this fight, I'm leaning towards Henry Cejudo. I'm leaning towards champ status. I think he'll take an extremely close decision. So I'm going for Henry Cejudo to become the new bantamweight champion, the flyweight champion, Olympic gold medalist. Man, he's a triple champ.
Man, you mentioned the word intriguing quite a few times there, and I absolutely agree. And I actually think this is one of the best matchups that we've seen all year in mixed martial arts as a whole. The fight is just so good from so many different levels, so many different angles. And let's just start with Cejudo, because we spoke about Cejudo at length when he fought TJ Dillashaw in that podcast, and when I watched tape on him for that fight, and the same still applies now, even more so after he beat TJ Dillashaw, is his rise in MMA, his development and his growth is just incredible. Like, I said this in the last podcast, I'll say it again, if you've not done it and you've got a little bit of time, go back and watch his UFC debut and watch his fights in chronological order up until the Dillashaw fight, because you'll just see the levels of development in this dude. So he's obviously coming in as an Olympic wrestler. I've said it time and time again, the one problem that all these Olympic wrestlers have when they come into MMA is there's a difference between Olympic wrestling and MMA wrestling, and that bridge has to be made between the two. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. You can't just come in with Olympic wrestling and expect to really flourish inside a cage. It's a totally different environment. So Henry Cejudo's come in. He's used his Olympic wrestling. It doesn't look fantastic in MMA, but it's decent enough at the level that he was fighting. Then he starts to develop his striking a little bit more. Then he goes back to his wrestling again, and he really starts to push on his wrestling. Then he comes out in a karate stance, totally new style of striking, really intriguing, knocks out Wilson Hayes. Then he goes back. It's almost like he's done it strategically, because he's gone back to his wrestling again. And at that point with the Demetrius Johnson fight, he finally bridged that gap between MMA wrestling and Olympic wrestling. Then his striking's on point as well. Unorthodox, weird, but it works for him. And man, it's just come together so beautifully for him, and he absolutely deserved that win against TJ Dillashaw. He came in there and he smoked him in round one, and honestly, I couldn't be happy for the guy, because when you see that sort of development from a debut fighter with a good Olympic wrestling level background, like I said, it's just beautiful to see. Now, on the flip side of this, we've got Marlon Moraes. Now, Marlon Moraes, highly touted in the World Series of Fighting, came in, had his debut against Rafael Assunção. What a fucking tough debut that is for any fighter. He loses the fight via split decision, a fight that I actually think that he may have won. The main thing regarding that fight is a 30-27 for Assunção was a disgusting scorecard. So then he goes in a close fight with Assunção, and Assunção has always been quite an underrated fighter as it is. So suddenly the hype on Moraes has dipped a little bit, and then he goes to a split decision with John Dodson, whose better days were behind him at that point. And now people were thinking, well, maybe Moraes isn't all that. He comes out against Aljamain Sterling and knocks him out in round one. He hits him with a knee, like you said, John, when he was going for a head kick. Aljamain Sterling just ducked at the most unfortunate time. He got caught. It would have been interesting to see that fight play out a little bit longer. I would have loved to have seen 3 rounds of that, because we would have seen exactly where Marlon Moraes' his takedown defense is and his wrestling defense is really at, which is key for this fight. Then he goes in with Jimmie Rivera. That lead step head kick was beautiful from Moraes, man. Honestly, it comes with power, ruthless intentions. It was quick. Rivera didn't even see it coming. Knocked Rivera out. Again, I would have liked to have seen 3 rounds of that. Then he comes in against Assunção in the rematch and guillotines him in round one after starching him. And again, I would have liked to have seen more of that. But, he just keeps on coming out there and putting these guys away in round one. Well, in the last 3 anyway. So he's turning in. His streak himself is absolutely ruthless. He's taking guys out at bantamweight at 135 pound in round one. The Dodson and Assunção fights weren't spectacular, but like I said, he's a developing fighter as well. He's not come in a finished product. He's come into the UFC. He's had some tough fights. He's only fought fucking tough dudes: Assunção, Dodson, Sterling, Rivera, and Assunção again. Like you don't get much of a stronger list than that for your UFC record. So, like I say, we've now got Marlon Moraes, who is the rightful number 1 contender, the guy that's taking dudes out, the guy that looks solid, the guy that is looking better and better each time out. And then we've got a fully developed Olympic wrestler who's got a karate style stepping up to 135 pounds after winning the 125 pound flyweight championship. This is where it becomes a little bit different though. Henry Cejudo at 135 pounds is in a new weight division. He's stepping up to a weight class that he's unfamiliar with. And he's not just stepping in there because he's moving permanently up to 135 pounds and he wants to settle in the division and go on a bit of a run and then get his title shot. He's stepping straight in for a title shot. Marlon Moraes at 135 pounds is not TJ Dillashaw at 125 pounds, and I think there's a little bit of recency bias with Henry Cejudo. And bear in mind, I was someone that bet Henry Cejudo at plus 175 underdog against TJ Dillashaw, so I just think there's a bit of recency bias with Henry Cejudo. The fact that I just think that when a fighter moves up a division, like I've already mentioned, if they're moving up to settle and they're getting a few fights under the belt at the new weight class, there's a load of different new things from up there, question marks, red flags, how are they going to cope with the weight, speed, power, all that sort of thing. It's a little differently when they settle themselves in and then they get the title shot. But just like TJ Dillashaw, we were talking potentially one of the best bantamweights that's ever walked the planet in mixed martial arts. He steps down to 125 not to settle in. He steps down to fight the current champion and he gets taken out. And I just think that if Henry Cejudo stepped up to 135 pound, had a couple of top 10 fights, got his body used to 135 pound, knew what to expect, and then challenged for the title, this would be a little different. But I'm leaning Marlon Moraes in this fight. I just think that the step up to 135 pounds for Cejudo is going to be different. He is going to be facing a guy that hits much harder than anybody else that he'll have ever fought before, which Marlon Moraes does, but he doesn't have the power just in his hands. He has the power in his kicks as well. But the key thing is from a stylistic perspective in this fight. Now, if Cejudo can really get his wrestling going and start taking Moraes down at will, then he's going to have a lot of success in this fight, and he is probably going to win the fight. But we've seen Marlon Moraes have decent takedown defense, and Henry Cejudo isn't a guy that's going to spend a minute or 2 minutes on top of you in any specific round. If Henry Cejudo does wrestle, it's going to be a rinse and repeat, and I just can't see that being a factor over 25 minutes that's going to win him a 5-round decision over Marlon Moraes, which, by the way, I do think the fight is going to go to a decision. Now, from Moraes' perspective, the dude is such a good reactive counter-striker. So when Cejudo's coming forward, because that's what Cejudo does, he will come forward and he will try and bounce in and out. His speed isn't going to be as predominant at 135 as what it was at 125. That's a fact. So he is going to give up a little bit of speed. He'll gain a little bit of power, though. But as he's coming forward of Marlon Moraes manages his distance so well. Like I've already mentioned, he's a good reactive striker, counter striker. And when opponents come forward on him, he will hit them and move off, angle away if he needs to. But then when he comes forward as well, he's smart. He comes forward at the right times. He throws just the right amount of strikes before he gets himself out of there. The way he strikes is just, it's phenomenal to watch. And like I said, it's just developing and developing. His low kicks. This is another thing with Cejudo. One weakness that Cejudo has is against fighters that can kick low. Look at what Mighty Mouse did to his leg really early on. It's a shame from Mighty Mouse's perspective that he didn't carry on hammering that leg of Cejudo, because he might have ended up stopping Cejudo. His leg started to give way in that first round, and Marlon Moraes will hit those low kicks, and then once those low kicks start becoming a problem for Cejudo, like we've already mentioned, he's got a good switch head kick. He'll start throwing up top as well. He'll mix it all in. His jab's going to be there. I just think that the fight is predominantly going to be won and lost on the feet, opposed to any wrestling in this fight. Yes, I think Moraes is going to get taken down once, twice, maybe 3 times throughout the 25 minutes. I don't think it's going to be one of those types of fights where Henry Cejudo keeps taking him down time and time again, and I don't think Henry Cejudo can hold him down either, which would be key to beating Marlon Moraes. For those reasons, I think Marlon Moraes is going to have a lot of success in a striking fight, which, like I said, I think that'll be predominantly where the fight takes place. So I am going to take Marlon Moraes to win. I do think he becomes the new bantamweight champion, and I think he takes it by decision. And in the next Showtime fight, we've got the second title fight of the evening, the Women's Flyweight Championship. Current champion Valentina Bullet Shevchenko versus Jessica I. John, who have you got?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this breakdown pretty short and sweet because I think this is going to be, as the line suggests, a rather one-sided outing, and obviously we've got it as one of the Showtime fights because how could you not have a title fight as one of the Showtime fights on here? But
I think a few people are about to disagree with you.
well, I believe so, yeah, but we've got him, man. It's a double titles event, so we've got to talk about the second title fight. But yeah, as I mentioned, I really do think this is going to be a one-sided affair. I think that Valentina Shevchenko has really found her weight class here at 125 pounds. Obviously, we've seen her fight a couple of times against Amanda Nunes up at bantamweight, losing on both those occasions. But I mean, she's beat Holly Holmes, beat Juliana Pena as well, Sarah Kaufman at high weight class one. So coming down to this weight, I mean, she just seems to have got even better. We saw her absolutely annihilate Priscilla Cachoeira, and then she fought Joanna Jędrzejczyk in her previous fight at UFC 231 and put on a dominant display in that. And honestly, every area of this fight, I think that Shevchenko is better. She's a better striker. She's got better striking with her hands, her feet. She's better in the clinch. She's got wrestling. She can take her opponents down, beat them up. She's got submissions. I mean, she's got takedown defense. I mean, I just don't see where Jessica Eye is going to be able to win this fight. And I'm actually quite glad that Jessica Eye has. I'm glad for her that she's got this fight, this title opportunity, because to come back from losing 5 fights out of 6, losing 4 in a row. Obviously, she was fighting up at bantamweight as well, which you could see she clearly wasn't cut out for. She was just too small for that weight class, and then she's come in and won 3 straight at 125 pounds. But look at the level of opposition as well: Kalindra Farrier, Jessica Rose Clark, Caitlin Chikagian. Obviously, that Chikagian fight was obviously touted as the number 1 contender fight, but she like I said, I just don't know how she can win this fight. I don't think she can outstrike Shevchenko. That's usually where she wins the fight. She usually makes it gritty and just bites down like gum shield and throws combinations and backs out, does it again, maybe spend a little bit of time in the clinch and landing a few shots and then just carry it on. But I just don't know how she's going to be able to do that against Shevchenko. I don't see a path to victory. She's not a particularly great wrestler that can take you down and then look to submit you. She doesn't really have power in her hands. She hasn't stopped anyone besides the Leslie Smith fight where Leslie Smith's ear pretty much exploded. She hasn't stopped anyone since 2012. So she's not going to stop Shevchenko. Shevchenko stands a lot better chance of stopping Jessica Eye. If it goes to 5 rounds, I can't see any other winner than Shevchenko, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was a clean sweep in the judges' eyes as well. Yeah, I just don't see any way that Jessica Eye is going to win this fight. I don't mean to sound disrespectful when I say that. I just can't. I think Shevchenko is elite. I think this weight class is perfect for her. I think she'll be very, very difficult to beat at this weight class. And yeah, I think she's going to win this fight. I think she's going to win fairly comfortably. I think she's going to beat Jessica Eye up. Jessica Eye's tough. I mean, even in those bantamweight clashes that she lost, the majority of them were, I think all of them actually were lost via decision. I think it will go the full 5 rounds, but as I said, I think Shevchenko will take a clean sweep and win this one unanimously.
Yeah, as people may have guessed from my comment halfway through the start of yours, I didn't really want to include this on the Showtime Fights. That was your decision. So if anybody's got any complaints or backlash, just fire it straight at John, not me. Thank you very much. But as for the fight, I think I'm going to say many similar things about this fight as what I said about Gustafsson last weekend. So fuck knows, who knows what's going to happen. But I just think that Shevchenko is better in every area, whether that be striking, grappling, wrestling, judo, clinch, Muay Thai, clinch, in the clinch, knees. I just feel that no matter where this fight goes, it's going to be very, very tough to overlook Shevchenko winning this fight. Like, when you consider your options, Jessica Eye, is she going to knock Shevchenko out? Well, listen, all fighters wear 4-ounce gloves, so there is always that chance. albeit very unlikely. Is she going to submit Shevchenko? I very, very highly doubt she's going to submit Shevchenko. I think that would be an absolute shock to anybody that follows the sport. And is she really going to beat Shevchenko over 5 rounds? Maybe if it was 3, and I mean, I'm really stretching with this. Maybe if it was 3 rounds and it was a really close fight and she got a split decision, not over 5 rounds. This is why championship fights are 5 rounds, because it really does separate the champion from his or her opponent, and I think that's exactly what would happen if it went 5 rounds. I could even see, like you said, John, a clean sweep, a 50-45 decision. I don't think it goes that far. I do think Shevchenko stops Jessica Eye via submission. I just think that she could almost take round 1 off and still win it in a way, just by low volume and just managing a distance, just to make sure she's got her reads right and she doesn't make any glaring mistakes, and she can just get a composure in there and really start thinking about what she wants to do. I think Ai's going to get really frustrated. I think she's going to struggle to touch Shevchenko up, or to get a hold of her, or even to make it gritty and ugly, which she does like to do in her fights. I mean, when you look at Jessica Ai's rise to the title shot, like you've already mentioned, John, she came off a 4-fight losing streak and then beat Kalinda Ferrier, who's no longer with the UFC, Jessica Rose Clark. Caitlin Chukagian was a close split decision, although I do think the right fighter won in Jessica Ai, personally. But like I say, I think she's going to really struggle in this fight, closing the distance, really landing on Shevchenko. She's going to get frustrated. She's going to start doing things that she wouldn't normally do, rushing, coming forward a little bit recklessly. I think Shevchenko's going to pick her off for the first couple of rounds, and then, depending on where Shevchenko wants to take it, she could keep it standing for 5 rounds and win a decision. I don't think she's in too much danger of getting knocked out. But personally, I think she's just gonna do what she did against Cachoeira. I think she's gonna take her down. I think she's gonna be dominant. But I do think later in the fight, when Jessica Ai's frustrated, when she's tired, when she realizes that there's levels and Shevchenko's a level above her, when she realizes that the moment's gone and she'll start to feel herself losing. She is tough. I don't see her getting finished by strikes, but I do see her making a mistake on the mat, with all those reasons that I've just mentioned in play. And I think that Shevchenko finds a submission on the mat. So I'm going to take Valentina Shevchenko to win. I'm going to take her to win via submission. And in the next Showtime fight, we've got a potential title eliminator. I spoke at the start of the podcast that we could have a couple of potential title eliminators. This is one: Tony El Kakui Ferguson against Donald Cowboy Cerrone. The winner of this could potentially take the newly announced winner of Khabib Nurmagomedov and Dustin Poirier. What a fight it is, John. Who have you got?
Oh yeah, man! I'm so excited about this fight. I'm probably, along with the main event, this fight obviously stands out for me as one of the best fights and the most intriguing fights of the year, as you mentioned, with the Cejudo and Moraes fight being one of the most intriguing fights of the year. This also is as well, and this also could be one of the most violent fights of the year. We've obviously got Donald Cerrone on a tear now, Dad Cerrone, as we like to call him now. He seems like a completely different fighter. Obviously, he made the decision to move back down to lightweight. People were concerned about that because he's struggled somewhat with not so much conditioning, but suffering those body shots and things like that. He's been stopped previously lightweight, and he does cut quite a lot of weight to get down there. But man, he looked great against Hernandez, and he looked great against Al Quinter, and then he's facing off against an absolute animal in Tony Ferguson. And I mean, first and foremost, it's great to see Tony Ferguson. He's going to be back in the octagon doing what he's known best for, and that's putting on an exciting performance for the fans and everyone else and himself. I mean, obviously his problems outside of the octagon have been quite well covered over the last few months, and yeah, I just think first and foremost it's great to see Tony Ferguson back in there and fighting again. And again, this is a really, really tough fight to pick. Obviously, for me, Tony Ferguson, he's the, especially in that last fight against Anthony Pettis, he's the striking equivalent of what Khabib Nurmagomedov is with wrestling, if you get me. He's relentless. I mean, Khabib will do that with his wrestling. He'll just take you down. He won't give you any breathing space. He'll just smother you. And Ferguson does that with his striking. When you look at that Pettis fight, watch it back. He's just constantly walking Pettis down throughout the entirety of the fight. And literally, I mean, walking down and standing toe-to-toe with him, phone booth fighting, just no space at all, and it wore on Pettis, and Pettis couldn't keep up at all with it. I mean, even when Pettis was cracking Ferguson, Pettis hurt him, he rocked him. Pettis just did the same, and he got his wits about him, and he just got back up and did it again. He just stood there in his face and threw strikes. And man, it's going to be so interesting to see how this fight plays out, because I think he'll go with a similar style against Cerrone. I think he'll want to put a pace on him. One of the worst things you can do is against Cerrone is fight at Cerrone's pace, because he will pick you apart on the feet. He's got a fantastic Muay Thai style, as we know. We saw that against Aljamain. If you don't try to mix it up with this guy or push your own pace in the fight, he'll just completely piece you up. Iquinta was talking, I think it was last week, I saw the week before, he was talking about the damage he took in the Cerrone fight, and Cerrone busted his nose up, busted his eye socket up or his cheekbone. And man, he just put on an absolute show, as he did against Hernandez. A lot of people going, Cerrone going back down to lightweight, he's a bit past it now. He beat Mike Perry, yeah, Mike Perry's okay. Hernandez is a beast. We saw what he did to Dariush. And man, he was 1,000 times better than Hernandez, and then he put on a show against Iquinta. So yeah, this to me is going to be just a stand-up battle, stand-up war. I think it's going to play out similarly to the Tony Ferguson fight with Pettis, because I don't think there's anybody in the world that Ferguson won't be willing to stand there and trade with. I mean, you put him in against the best striker, the best wrestler. The guy's a maniac. He'll just come charging at you and throwing punches, throwing wild combinations. One thing he does do really well, which I forgot until I watched the Pettis fight back, is how well and how fluently he can switch stances and fight efficiently with a good crisp jab out of both orthodox and southpaw. He mixes up the leg kicks nicely. As I said, he'll throw in like a spinning elbow or a spinning back fist when you're not expecting it. When he backs you up against the cage, he'll land a 1-2 and then come crashing forward with an elbow. And obviously the one thing you have to be careful of with that is being countered, and we've seen many times that Tony Ferguson can be hurt, but he can't be put away. I mean, we saw him hurt against Pettis. If I remember rightly, Lee wobbled him. Venata, we definitely know, hurt him. Edson Barbosa, we know, hurt him. But he's got extreme heart to go with that crazy style of his. And as I said, putting him away, and he's a completely different beast to rocking him and wobbling him, because you know that he's got the heart to come back. And I also think that can play into a judge's eyes, the referee's eyes sometimes. If you knock someone down like Tony Ferguson, you saw what he was like against Venata. He couldn't barely stand up, but some of these guys have a reputation for, he can fight his way out of this even when he's really rocked. Just think back to Czech Congo, Pat Barry, that kind of thing. And maybe even if it's not intentional, these guys sometimes, I think, get an extra second or two to try and get out of those dangerous positions, because they're so well renowned for getting their head back in the game and recovering and getting their wits about them again. But I'm going to have to go with Tony Ferguson to win this fight, man. I mean, the guy's just a beast. He's got fantastic wrestling credentials as well, which he doesn't use. He just likes to stand there and punch you in the face and take a punch to land 2 punches. But yeah, he's an elite wrestler. I mean, Cerrone has been mixing in a couple of takedowns in his last few fights, but I don't think he'll be able to against Ferguson. I don't think he will. Like I say, I think it will predominantly played out on the feet. And yeah, I just think Ferguson is going to put an absolute pace on Cerrone. I think he will get cracked. I think he will get wobbled because Cerrone has power. Cerrone's a good striker, good counter striker as well. Ferguson does leave himself exposed and open. Honestly, I wouldn't be 1,000,000% shocked at all if Cerrone did win this fight and Cerrone caught Ferguson with something when Ferguson was doing something crazy. But playing the percentages, I think more often than not, Tony Ferguson wins this fight, and I think he's going to play it similarly in this fight. I think he will keep trying to back up Cerrone, get Cerrone fighting off his back foot, press him against the cage, walk him down. I think he'll try and land those body shots over and over again, because we have seen that susceptibility to body shots previously. And I think Tony Ferguson's going to stop him. I think he's going to put an absolute pace on. I think he's going to bust him up like he did to Pettis. I think it's going to be bloody. And I think second round, maybe third round, I think the pressure will be too much. And just one tiny thing that I forgot to add is Ferguson's gas tank is insane. I know I've said about he pushes the pace, but he can do it for 3 rounds as well. He can do it for 15 minutes, no problem. His gas tank is insane. So, yeah, I just think he's going to put on that pace, and yeah, he's going to get it finished in round 2, round 3. So I'm going with Tony Ferguson to win this fight. I think he'll win via knockout, TKO in round 3. I'm going to go with early stages of round 3.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of red flags and a couple of question marks on Tony Ferguson. So, one that I'm not really going to go into at all is the personal issues that's kept him outside of the cage lately.
Yeah.
You know, that's always a potential question mark or a potential red flag when a fighter's coming back, especially with it being so soon as well. You know, it's not as if he's had like a massive layoff. You know, his last fight was back in October last year, so
Yeah.
it's not been a huge layoff. It's not been like 1 year or 18 months or 2 years or anything like that. So that is a potential question mark. The other one is his age as well. He's 35, so he is getting, you know, he's definitely closer to the end of his career than he is to the beginning of his career. Admittedly, Cowboy is a year older at 36, but there's not a lot of difference in the two. Now, from Cowboy's point of view, I'm loving his resurgence, man. Dad Cowboy, he's on a 3-fight win streak, which is just amazing to see. You know, finished Mike Perry submission. Then he knocked out the highly touted prospect Alexander Hernandez. Then he went in and we cashed a plus 120 underdog when he absolutely smoked Kowalkiewicz for 4 rounds, won a decision. So, man, I love the resurgence on him. But those are not Tony Ferguson. And this is where it's key, because I say it all the time, there's levels in this game. Now, I'm not saying Tony Ferguson's levels above Cowboy Cerrone, because he's not. What I'm saying is Tony Ferguson's levels above the fighters that Cerrone is beaten, especially lately. And even if you go and look at Cerrone's losses in his UFC career as of late, I'm not going to go through them all. I mean, admittedly, there is only 11 in his illustrious career, but the recent ones, we've got Leon Edwards, Darren Till, Robbie Lawler, Jorge Masvidal, Rafael Dos Anjos. Those are the elite of the elite in the time that he fought them, especially as well. And to me, what that screams is a fighter that absolutely smokes his opponents that he's supposed to smoke, but comes unstuck and struggles when he's finally fighting the top of, you know, the cream of the crop, the top of the division. And like I said, when you look at Kowalkiewicz, Alexander Hernandez, Mike Perry, Yancy Medeiros, Matt Brown, Rick Story, Patrick Cote, none of those fighters are 24-3 Tony Alkakui Ferguson, who's on an 11-fight win streak, by the way. So I just think that Cowboy is on a great resurgence. We love it. We love seeing his little kid inside the cage every time he wins with his headphones on, and you know it's cool, and it's awesome and delightful to root for somebody like Donald Cowboy Cerrone, because he is a legend of the sport. He will be a Hall of Famer in the UFC, but in this fight, I think the resurgence is coming to an end, because stylistically, it's not a great fight for him. Quality, I think, is definitely on Ferguson's end, whether that be on the feet or on the mat. You know, Cerrone, we've spoke about in previous fights how, if like Iaquinta, if he wanted to take Iaquinta down and he managed to get him down and he wanted to try and grapple him, he would have probably out-grappled him. You know, he's got a good ground game, but Tony Ferguson's ground game, that 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu from Eddie Bravo is another level, man. And I think that if the fight hits the mat, I'd give Tony Ferguson the advantage. I think if the fight stays on the feet, I'd give Tony Ferguson the advantage. Now, talking about the fight on the feet, and you mentioned something specifically that I've noticed as well, John, is Tony Ferguson works southpaw and orthodox really well. Predominantly is orthodox, but the thing is he can switch stances to start loading kicks up to Cowboy's body, which this is where Cowboy has always been quite deficient against another kicker, defending kicks, especially to the body as well, or body shots in general. With a fighter like Ferguson that can switch that stance when he needs to and land body kicks, take the wind out of Cerrone and really start putting him in a little bit of trouble. And also the pace, that's something else Cerrone's always seems to have struggled against in his career. The pace and forward pressure of relentless fighters. And that is how you describe Tony Ferguson. He, like you've mentioned yourself, John, he's wild, he's a madman, he will come forward, he'll take a punch to give a punch. You know, his nickname's El Kukui, which is the bogeyman. And, you know, it's that just defines him. He just keeps coming. He just can't get the dude away. And I think for 3 rounds, if it goes 3 rounds, Tony Ferguson constantly putting the pace on Cerrone, switching stances, throwing kicks to the body. He's got a beautiful jab. His volume's crazy as well. Like, you go and look at pretty much all his previous fights, he's outlanded his opponents. And even in that fight against Petr, it went like 2 rounds and he scored over 100 strikes. Like, fucking come on, you know, the volume's ridiculous. Now, it's not going to be one way all fight. You know, I'm making it sound like it is, but it's not. The ways Cowboy wins this fight is by countering effectively, by throwing kicks back at Ferguson. I don't think he's going to match him with his hands. I think Cowboy's really going to have to be on his bike a little bit, counter strike, throw kicks, try and land a shin on his jaw. We did see Ferguson hurt against Pettis. We have seen Ferguson hurt before with Lando Venata. The problem is, though, like, again, you mentioned, you can't get the dude out of there. He'll be rolling for knee bars. And a referee will never, ever, ever stop a fight until the fighter that's hurt stops moving and stops defending himself, which Tony Ferguson doesn't. You physically have to knock this dude out cold unconscious for him to quit and give up. I don't think Cowboy can do that. I think Ferguson, all fights start standing. I think Ferguson is going to have a lot of success on the feet. I do struggle to see it hitting the mat. I would be surprised if anyone's shot in for a takedown. I think they'll both be more than happy to stand, strike, get bloodied up, and potentially take 50k home each. So for that type of fight, again, I still favour Tony Ferguson. I think his angles are better. I think the forward pressure, the volume, and the damage that he'll inflict on Cowboy would look good on the judges' scorecard should it hit a decision. I don't think it does. I agree with you again, John. I think that the fight's going to be close to start off with in, you know, the first half round, maybe the first round. I think Tony Ferguson's going to start pulling away with volume and power, and I think he will break Cerrone later in the fight. So I've got Tony Ferguson to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now, in the last Showtime fight, another potential title eliminator in the bantamweight division. Obviously, we've got the bantamweight championship at the top of the card, but here we've got Aljamain Sterling versus Pedro Munhoz. John, who have you got?
Yeah, again, like you say, another really exciting fight. Title eliminator. Either of these two guys could have stepped in to face Marlon Moraes if the Cejudo fight didn't happen. But yeah, man, I'm just glad we get to see this fight, because this fight is another fight that's going to be really entertaining, really exciting fight. For me, Aljamain Sterling he's a guy who's really improved his striking game. I mean, we know he's got a very, very good wrestling background. He's got good, dangerous submissions. His striking stand-up was probably the area that he was most efficient. I mean, he was a good striker. He was a decent striker, but over the last few fights, we've really seen him step up. The Brett Johns fight, I think it all started with predominantly he busted up Brett Johns' leg. His timing of the jab and everything was perfect. He maintains range really well. I think that's one of his best traits on the feet is his range and his how he moves in and out of range, how he maintains range. Obviously, he's tall and long for this weight class. He's got long arms, long legs. He uses that front kick, that teep, to really, really good effect to keep distance. And more often than not, his opponents just cannot get in there to land strikes, and then the more they try, the more that Sterling just catches him with leg kicks or the teep or the jab, the 1-2s, and then he angles off. And he's good fighting off his back foot as well. When he does get pressed up against the cage, he does fight well off his back foot. He'll use that teep to escape, and then just repeats. And we've seen him in his last two fights, especially Jimmie Rivera, a tough guy who he beat in a via decision back in February. He struggled to get Rivera down. Rivera's got a good takedown defense, but he significantly outstruck Jimmie Rivera in that fight, and it was just by using that range, using those kicks. Sometimes it's not always the most pretty, but it's very efficient. And as I said, his distance management is absolutely fantastic now. And we don't really need to talk about his wrestling and his grappling credentials, because he's a very good wrestler. We know that. We saw what he can do submission wise against Cody Stamann as well, with that vicious knee bar in their fight back in September last year as well at UFC 228. Pedro Munhoz is a guy who is dangerous, man. He's been on a tear. Obviously, we saw him in that war against Cody Garbrandt in his last fight. Another guy who very similarly has won his last three fights, starting with the Brett Johns fight, which he won a unanimous decision. And then he fought Brian Caraway, finished him in the first round. Then Cody Garbrandt finished him in the first round. What I liked about that Garbrandt fight was his use of that low leg kick. You could see he was really troubling Garbrandt, who's obviously got that boxing heavy style, so he's quite heavy on that lead leg. He was chopping up the lead leg. I think he frustrated Garbrandt. Garbrandt then came in wild, and Munhoz caught him, and then Garbrandt caught Munhoz. Munhoz is tough as nails to put away. I mean, if you get a chance to put him away, again, he can recover, and we saw that in the Garbrandt fight. And yeah, so they then just traded blows, and eventually Munhoz had the power to put him away. And one thing as well about Pedro Munhoz, which I think will obviously kind of put a little doubt in the back of Sterling's mind, is his dangerous and nasty guillotine. He's got multiple guillotine chokes on his record as well. So obviously, if Sterling shoots him for the takedown, he has to be very careful of that. Has to be careful, because Munhoz can snatch your neck quite easily, and he's got a nasty crank to it as well. But for me, I think we've seen in the last few fights with Aljamain Sterling that even if he can't take his opponents down, he finds a way to win on the feet. And as I said, he did that in the Jimmie Rivera fight, who's a guy that actually beat Munhoz. But I know we're going back some time now, back to 2015. But yeah, I mean, Aljamain Sterling gets it done. He lands strikes on you, and it's mainly using that distance management and that long reach with the arms and the legs of his. So for me, if the fight remains standing, I do think that Sterling can do enough to get a decision. I don't think Sterling will finish Munhoz. I think there's more chance of Pedro Munhoz finishing Sterling, because he has got power and he has got submissions, but I don't think Sterling will allow it to get into that position. And I think we're going to see a very calm and a very methodical approach by Aljamain Sterling. Very sensible approach, using that distance, frustrating Pedro Munhoz, and taking a decision in this one. So I'm going with Aljamain Sterling to win the fight via decision.
Yeah, man. Both, like I say, I think it's going to be a title eliminator. I don't know if it's been officially confirmed or not, but I can't see any other reason that it wouldn't be. And both fighters are so deserving of this, of a title shot in this fight. You've got. I just want to talk about the records just to start with. You've got Aljamain Sterling at 17-3, Pedro Munhoz at 18-3. Man, what a fucking fight this is. They've only lost 6 between them, man, and it is such a good fight. Two different styles as well. You've got Sterling, who's going to be the longer fighter in there, the fighter that's going to use kicks, the fighter that is going to try and stay on the outside. His boxing has never been that good. It's improved over the last couple of years, but it's still not the level of Munhoz. If Munhoz gets inside, which is predominantly where he will want to be in this fight, and he really starts boxing in the pocket with Sterling, he'll piece him up, man, and he could probably end up knocking Sterling out, if I'm honest. But Sterling, that's it. Much easier said than done. Sterling does manage distance really well. He does use his kicks to stay on the outside. When he gets in any sort of danger, he's got no problem turning his back and running out of there, exiting out, or just level changing for a takedown or pushing his opponent into the clinch. He manages his distance so well that he tries and succeeds to be either on the outside, so totally out, or all the way in, so the literally chest to chest. He doesn't really allow his opponents to stay at boxing range, because that is where he's deficient, and I think he knows that as well. Now, as for where Sterling goes and what he does in this fight, I don't think that he'll get away with being on the back foot and being all the way out for 15 minutes in this fight. There is going to be times where Munhoz does close the distance. Munhoz has got the slicker movement coming forward. He's also faster as well, and like I say, he's got the pocket boxing that will absolutely cause Sterling trouble. So Sterling, for me, isn't going to get away with doing this for 15 minutes like he did against Rivera. I'm not sure what was up with Rivera that night. He did seem a little off, but Munhoz is gonna have success in this fight for sure. Now, what Sterling's got to be really careful of is when Munhoz comes forward, if he decides actually not to clinch or not to angle, and he does want to drop down, level change, and try and take Munhoz down. Munhoz has got one of the nastiest guillotines in mixed martial arts, period. It's a guillotine where when he wraps it up properly, he gets it to the point where you physically cannot use your hand to tap out. It's got to be a verbal submission, kick your legs. It's so nasty. Now, the key thing is here, something I've noticed is Munhoz seems to prefer this guillotine on his right-hand side opposed to his left-hand side, right? So if I've noticed that, you can bet your bottom dollar his head coach, Mr. Matt Serra, will have noticed that. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, black belt, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wizard. He's going to know that. So I think Sterling is actually okay to shoot on Munhoz as long as he goes to Munhoz's left-hand side, so to Sterling's right-hand side. And the reason why I say that is because there was one fight in particular where Munhoz actually tied up, I think it was Brett Johns. Munhoz actually tied up the guillotine on the left-hand side, and rather than trying to complete it, he tried to switch it over to his right, and it lost position. Now, to me, that's not a mistake. That's not a mistake that he's just decided to switch his guillotine from one side to the other. That's a preference. So I think that he prefers it on the right-hand side, and if that is true, then that's definitely a path for Sterling to shoot in and try and take Munhoz down. Ultimately, to win this fight for Sterling, he's got to mix it up, because like I say, he can't stay on the outside all fight. Munhoz will get in, Munhoz will catch him, and if he keeps backing up and backing up and backing up, and it gets worse and worse and worse for him, he's going to start falling behind in the judges' eyes. And then I do think the fight's going to go to a decision. I don't see a finish in this fight. So if Sterling does keep on doing that, he's going to put himself in a bad decision when the scorecards are being read out, because it's going to be extremely close. So he's got to accept that Munhoz is going to close the distance at times, and it's just how he manages that. So like I say, I just think he's got more paths to victory, both from an offensive and a defensive point of view. So when Munhoz does close in, he can clinch up, he can shoot a takedown, potentially off his right-hand side over to Munhoz's left, or he can exit an angle if he wants to, but he's got to attack in that defense as well, if that makes sense. So for me, how Munhoz wins the fight is he's got to keep coming forward. He's got to get inside the pocket regularly. He's got to start piecing up Sterling. He's got to make Sterling really hesitate when that distance is finally closed. If you can get him hesitating, maybe feint his way in, and he can get him reacting to things, then that's going to ultimately, like I say, start putting doubt in Sterling's mind. He's going to start falling behind on the scorecards. Munhoz is going to then start putting the pressure on, moving forward, and just being able to take over the fight. Ultimately, I don't think he does that. I do think Sterling has success at distance. I do think that when Munhoz closes distance, he's going to have an answer for the problems that he's going to face from Munhoz. I genuinely think Aljamain Sterling has developed into a fantastic fighter all round. Every fighter has the holes. No fighter's perfect. Where Sterling has his holes and is in his pocket boxing, but he's got so many tools to deal with that issue that I don't think it's going to be much of a problem. So for those reasons, I think Aljamain Sterling's going to take this fight. I think he's going to beat Pedro Munhoz. I think he's going to get a title fight against the winner of Cejudo and Marlon Moraes. I'm taking Aljamain Sterling to win, and I'm going to take him to win via decision. Now, this is normally the part of the podcast where we move on to the parlay piece, followed by the dogfight. But for this podcast, we're going to do something a little different. I was honestly struggling to be really confident in any plus money underdog. And I'm never going to force anything in this game. So instead of trying to force something that's not there, we're going to give you all a nice plus money parlay instead. So we've done an extra Showtime fight to make up for it. And this parlay that I'm about to break down and that you're about to break down, John, will currently pay north of plus 150. So the first plus money parlay piece of the podcast is in the Tuivasa and Blagoy Ivanov fight. Now, for me, this is Tuivasa. For those that have listened to previous podcasts, you're going to know that I'm not massively high on Blagoy Ivanov. I still can't believe that JDS was a minus 160 favourite against him when he came in on his debut. Cashed that easily. And I also bet him against Rothwell as well. I bet Rothwell, I think it was at plus 110 as an underdog. I felt like he should have been a reasonably sized favourite in that fight. I also felt that the judges the judges robbed Rothwell of that win because, man, he didn't win. Ivanov did not win that fight. I was so sure when they read the scorecards out that Rothwell's name was going to get, he was going to get his hand raised. I feel really bad for the dude. Rothwell, just sidetracking, seemed to have come in with some apparent personal issues and he'd been out for a while. And, it wasn't a fantastic performance. It was a slow, sluggish, sloppy performance from both fighters. But ultimately, Rothwell won the fight, in my opinion, in my eyes, and in so many other eyes as well. So I do feel bad for the dude. But Ivanov, we know what he's about now. We know exactly what he's about. He is a low-volume striker. He comes forward slowly, not very often, predominantly prefers to fight on the back foot, allows his opponents to come forward, and he just counter with hard shots, but they're never a combination. It's a one, or at most he'll throw a couple of 1-2s throughout his fights. And it's never anything too damaging. It's never anything too significant. And like I say, it's low volume, and he seems to be so easy to read inside the cage. When you're a professional mixed martial artist at this level, you're going to be able to make reads on a fighter like that. You're going to be able to plan for a fighter like that. And like I say, Blagoy Ivanov, I mean, Tuivasa isn't Dos Santos. Even though Tuivasa caused Dos Santos more problems than a round than Blagoy did over 5 rounds against him. So that's one point to be mentioned. But Tuivasa is much more dynamic. He's quicker and more accurate striker than Ben Rothwell. Ben Rothwell obviously has got the huge physical advantages. But if the fight plays out in the same way as the Rothwell fight played out, I think Tuivasa is going to absolutely piece Ivanov up, potentially even finish him as well. Now, my only concern with this is, and it was actually something that I had the concern, and then I heard an interview from Ivanov earlier on. So my concern was Ivanov's got a combat sambo background, right? And he's competed in combat sambo. He's decorated as well. He's got the ability to get this fight to the mat, or fucking any fight to the mat. With the credentials that he's got, he can get fighters to the mat. It's just he doesn't choose to do it. Now, that's a problem for me because Tuivasa is extremely deficient off his back. He really doesn't handle being on his back very well at all, whether that be improving position, just containing the opponent, or trying to stand up or trying to do anything. He's not totally incompetent, but he's very deficient in that area. Now, I was thinking to myself, well, fuck, if Ivanov does come out and wants to take him to the mat, that's where he's going to have a lot of success, and he will beat Tuivasa if he can do that for 2 rounds out of the 3 and tire him out, right? So then I listened to an interview, and Ivanov saying these sort of things, that he's aware, it should be a good fight because Tuivasa likes to strike as well. I was thinking, okay, well, maybe he's planning for another striking fight, but then he started moving on to, noticing that he's pretty bad with his ground and pound, and his ground game's not so great. So Now I was thinking, well, is he going to take him down, or is he just trying to bluff him and, he prefers to strike? But listen, I'm not sure how Ivanov even gets his fighters to the mat, because I've watched so much tape on him. I've never really seen him attempt to take down or really commit to taking his fighter down to the mat. I know he's got submission wins on his record, but I'm talking recent. I'm not talking about his entire career. So I can only go on what I'm seeing in tape, and I'm seeing, like I said, a low volume, slow, reactive, counter striking heavyweight that is happy to stay on the feet, on the back foot, and land the big one shots as a counter. I'm not seeing a guy that's coming out trying to clinch up and throw his opponents to the mat. So I can't really make the assumption that he is going to do that. We've seen it time and time again where fighters that do have a particular expertise in a certain discipline in mixed martial arts tend to fall in love with another discipline and really, not use their bread and butter and, their initial discipline, what brought them into the sport. And I just feel that Ivanov is in that category. If it stays on the feet, which I think it's going to, I think Tai Tuivasa's definitely got the volume. He's definitely got the accuracy. The forward pressure is going to be key if it hits the scorecards, which I do think it does, by the way. I don't see a finish in this fight. I could potentially see Tai Tuivasa slowing down a little bit, but I think that's going to be later in the fight. I think he's going to flourish in this fight. I think he's going to be able to land on Ivanov. I think he's going to see the big shots coming his way. I think he's going to be able to use kicks as well, potentially aim for the legs. Tuivasa's got big tree trunk legs, so maybe take the base away from Ivanov, so that slow movement does become a little slower. The reactive punches do become a little less reactive. I think stylistically it favours Tai Tuivasa in this fight. For that reason, I am going to take Tai Tuivasa to win, and I am going to take him to win via decision. John, who have you got?
I've come to the decision that if we get this fight wrong and Tai Tuivasa doesn't beat Blagoy Ivanov, I'm no longer talking about a Blagoy Ivanov fight again, because obviously, if those of you with a good memory will know that I picked Ivanov to beat Dos Santos when they met, got that one horribly wrong. So so for the Rothwell fight, I was like, I'm definitely favouring Rothwell in this fight. Got that one wrong. So if it's a hat trick of defeats, any Ivanov fight is therefore scrapped from the podcast going forward. But getting to the fight itself, I think you've covered most points. I mean, Ivanov is very, very combo shy, should I say. He does just throw those single strikes, very sluggish. He does have decent power, but he will only throw a single strike time. Maybe he'll throw the occasional two-punch combination, but he never really puts anything together. He never really presses the action. He's happy to kind of just go at whatever pace his opponent is putting on him. You've mentioned it already. Rothwell was robbed in that fight. I was adamant that Rothwell won that fight. I know that Ivanov definitely won one of the rounds, but I was more than comfortable in the fact that Rothwell had done significantly more damage in the other two rounds. But sadly the judges didn't see it the same way as a lot of people watching around the world. But I mean, as you've covered, I just think Tuivasa, he's got that speed. He does have decent power. He's got a lot of finishes on his record. He caused Dos Santos a bit of concern in that first round. Obviously, Dos Santos came back and finished him very nicely in round two. But Dos Santos is a top level fighter, former champion. I mean, he's right on the cusp of another title shot as well. So there's you can't really take that into consideration too much, because Dos Santos absolutely schooled Ivanov when those two fought. I just think if Tuivasa for 2 rounds to put a pace on and just throw 2 or 3 strike combinations, mixing a leg kick. He does throw his kicks quite nicely for a big heavyweight as well, and I think he'll be able to do enough damage and outstrike Ivanov quite comfortably to be 2 rounds up and be able to coast to a decision win. As you mentioned, the big red flag is that ground game, but will Ivanov attempt to take the fight to the mat? As you said, you haven't seen him in any recent fights attempt that. to be fair, you've probably seen a lot more tape than I have, but
unfortunately.
But from what I've seen as well, I haven't seen him try to take the fight to the mat and use that combat sambo background. So for that reason, although he has that in his locker, I can't say that he's going to use that and he's going to use that to good effect, because he doesn't in his previous fights. So why would he start now? He may do, possibly, but yeah, I can't take the risk in saying that he will utilise his superior advantage in the wrestling and the ground game over Tuivasa. So for that reason, yeah, I think that Tuivasa outstrikes him again. Like you said, I think he'll go to a decision. I don't think Ivanov really has that one punch, that massive one punch power. I mean, like I did say he hits hard, he does, but I don't think he has that one punch power, having seen him more so. Tuivasa, he's powerful, but Ivanov looks like he can take a shot. I mean, he got outstruck by Dos Santos for 5 rounds and still stayed in there. So yeah, for that reason, I think the fight will go the distance. I think Tuivasa will definitely outstrike him for 2 out of the 3 rounds, just by using those combinations and his speed advantage. So yeah, I agree. I'm going with Tai Tuivasa to win this fight via decision.
And the second plus money parlay piece is in the Xiaonan Yan versus Angela Hill fight. Now, again, anybody that's listened to previous podcasts when I'm breaking down Xiaonan Yan fights, I love this girl. She's so good to watch, man. She's dynamic, she's aggressive, she's got a lot of weapons in her arsenal, whether that be spin back fists or lead hook kicks to the head, flying kicks. She's got a wide variety of attacks to use, and it basically keeps her opponents on their toes at all times, because you never really know what she's going to throw next. And Angela Hill is a fighter that takes a lot of shit, in my opinion, and I actually don't mind her as a fighter at all. She goes in there and she gets a job done, and this is her second fight in X amount of weeks, and she just likes fighting, and she does put it out there, and she does fight well. At times, yes, she has her off fights just like any other fighter, but I think in this fight it's just going to be really tough for Angela Hill, because where I think Hill is more technical, I think she'll get out volumed. I think she'll have to make some real in-cage adjustments to when she starts seeing these weird unorthodox strikes coming in from Xiaonan. And how she makes those adjustments, I'm not too sure, because it's almost like the old saying where the expert can sometimes get trumped by the amateur. And I'm not saying Xiaonan's an amateur, but what I'm saying is, because I believe that Angela Hill has better technique than Xiaonan, sometimes that can get a bit confusing when you're not fighting technique versus technique, and if that makes sense. So with Xiaonan, I think that she's going to be the one predominantly coming forward. Angela Hill's going to be the one coming backwards. I think Hill's going to kick the legs of Xiaonan. I think she's going to try and pop a jab out there, but ultimately I just don't think that she can do enough over 3 rounds against Xiaonan Yan. The only thing that I think Hill could do to have success in this fight, if she had this style, would be to level change, clinch up, try and get Xiaonan's back on the mat. But that's not Angela Hill's game at all. Angela Hill is a striker, and it is going to be a fight that stays on the feet. Like I said, I feel that it's a really tough fight for Hill. I don't think she can out volume Xiaonan Yan. I don't think she's going to land the harder shots. I don't think she's going to put it on her to a point where Yan starts to get worried in the fight at all. I think it's going to be it's a really good fight for Xiaonan Yan. A nice step up, a little bit of a name, and then she can push on from there. And go and look back to Hill's fight against Jodie Esquibel, because Jodie Esquibel is not on the same level as Xiaonan Yan. Yeah, Esquibel was having some success in that fight. She did drop Hill very momentarily. She did pop that jab in Hill's face quite often as well. And ultimately, she made, I think, Angela Hill, who was a -600 favourite in that fight, look like a potential minus 200, minus 250 favourite. It was it was not the squash match that everybody thought it would be. Escobar put up a decent fight, and I just feel if that's Xiaonan Yan in the place of Jody Escobar, man, the fight goes a different way. I think I'm not, like I said, I'm not sure where the path to victory is for Hill if she can't outland her, which I don't think she can. If she can outland her and really get some significant strikes, because this is the other thing. I think the fight's going to go to a decision, and when a fighter's fighting on the back foot for the most of the 15 minutes, for most of the fight, unless they're landing significant counter strikes, it's not going to look that great in the judges' eyes. And listen, the one that's coming, the fighter that's coming forward, throwing the crazy kicks and landing the volume and looking dynamic and dangerous, is the one that the judges are going to favour. So for that reason, I'm going to take Xiaonan Yan to beat Angela Hill. Like I say, Xiaonan Yan's sort of hovering around the minus 200 mark. Tuivasa's at the minus 140 mark. Both of those together come round at the plus 150 mark. For a plus money parlay, you don't have to go big on it. You can go small because you'll still get decent returns. I think both fighters stylistically have got a good fight in front of them. So for that reason, your plus money parlay for the podcast is Tai Tuivasa, Xiaonan Yan. John, finish it off. What's your thoughts on this fight?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. I like Xiaonan Yan. I think she's got high ceiling in the division. She mixes up very nice, crisp technique with wild things like you say, like flying knees and those spinning kicks and things like that. And yeah, I just think in this fight, she's going to be the more aggressive fighter, and I think that is what is going to win her the fight. I think she's going to march Angela Hill down. I don't think Angela Hill has anything that will be able to stop her. I mean, she doesn't really throw with bad intention in her hand. She hasn't finished anyone since she was back in Invicta. That was back in 2016. Yeah, she hasn't got that real level change in a locker. She can't really just level change, take it to the mat and get Xiaonan Yan thinking, I don't want to become over aggressive here and march her down because she could duck under one of my strikes, take me down. I don't think that's going to happen either. I think Yan hits harder, land the heavier strikes. I think Angela Hill's more volume and 75% power, whereas Yan will come forward and throw with power as well, as good volume. And yeah, as you said, it just doesn't look good in the judges' eyes if you're constantly backing up and your opponent's marching forward, your head's snapping back when they're landing the jab or the 1-2, and then they're mixing in like a jumping knee or those head kicks or anything like that, and then you're just constantly backing up, and then yeah, you're landing 1 or 2 strikes to every 5 to 8 strikes that they're landing on you. So I just think it's going to be a case of Xiaonan Yan marching Hill down for the fight, putting a pace on her, landing those solid shots, and I also think it'll go to the judges' scorecards. I don't think Hill's pretty tough to put away as well. I know that we saw Randa Marcos get her out of there in the first round. But besides that, I mean, she's gone to a decision with Jessica Andrade, Nina Ansaroff, Courtney Casey, and then you're looking back at Rose Namajunas before back in 2015. So she's hard to put away. As you mentioned, I'll briefly mention as well. When you look at her victories, Jody Escobar, she was a heavy favourite in that. I don't rate Escobar particularly highly. Mariana Moraes was a decent win back in February last year. Then you're looking at like Ashley Yoder, and then you're looking back to some of the ladies in Invicta. I mean, there's no one there that stands out. When she goes up against decent level fighters, she tends to lose. I think Xiaonan Yan is a decent level fighter. I think she will continue to climb up the rankings, and yeah, I think Yan's going to take this fight. I think she's going to win a decision.
And with the breakdowns complete, we'll now enter the quick fire round. And first up in the quick fire round is Jimmie Rivera versus Petr. John, who have you got?
Oh yeah, this is a great fight. Really excited for this one. Could be the breakout fight for Petr. I know that we've been hard on him for a long time. More and more people are getting hard on him on social media, but beating a name like Jimmie Rivera, who's been hanging around the top of the division, could work wonders for him. Obviously, we know Jimmie Rivera hits hard. He's got good wrestling, got a good takedown defense, got good takedowns for himself. Petr is a very, very good boxer. He also has got very good takedowns. He can get back to his feet as well. We saw him taken down a couple of times by Dodson. He got back to his feet. For me, I think Petr speed and his boxing are going to be the real difference makers in this fight. I think he's going to be able to land 2 or 3 strikes for every winging strike that Rivera throws. I think he'll be able to land kicks. He switches stance to throw kicks as well. Rivera may get the odd takedown, but Jan will get back to his feet. So for me, I'm going with Petr to win this fight. I think it's going to go to a decision, but I'm going with I think Petr will take it.
I'm in near agreement with you. First of all, I think the line's completely off just for the fact that this, like it or not, think what you like of Petr. This is a massive step up for him.
Yeah.
So with that said, I think the line's a little off. But in regards to the stylistic matchup, you've got to favour Petr because I don't think... it wouldn't surprise me if Rivera's shot in for a couple of takedowns, but I really don't see him completing the takedowns because he's got to get close enough to get his entries right. When he gets close enough, he's going to get hit with laser sharp, accurate, hard strikes from Petr. And this is where I agree with you, John, because this is where the difference is in the fight. It is that technique. It is the power. It is how fast and accurate he strikes, both going forwards and coming backwards as well, which is really, really key for a fight like this, for where you are going to have to spend time moving forward and moving backwards. I think Petr, again, like you mentioned, John, is going to land 2 or 3 strikes to every one that Rivera throws. I think every time Rivera closes the distance and gets into the pocket, he's going to get blasted with something. The only thing that I disagree with you, John, is I don't think it hits the scorecards. I do think that Rivera is a little chinny. Petr hits so fucking hard, so accurate. I just feel that some of the punches that he was landing on Dodson, Rivera would not be able to withstand. So for that reason, I'm going to take Petr to win. I'm going to take him to win by knockout. Now, in your next quick fire fight, we've got Tatiana Suarez versus Nina Ansaroff. John, who have you got?
Yeah, the undefeated Suarez. Really excited to see her step up in competition again against Nina Ansaroff. I mean, Suarez, the line's massively in favour of Suarez. I mean, Ansaroff is a huge underdog in this fight, and I could see why, because a lot of people are calling Tatiana Suarez the female Khabib Nurmagomedov. She's brutal with those takedowns, relentless. She's got heavy top pressure. She could shoot from the middle of the octagon, and she just drives those takedowns, drives you to the fence, and gets you down if she can't blast you with that double leg. If Ansaroff could stop the takedowns, which she did well against Brandon Marcos in the fight before last, and then obviously against Claudio Gadelha in the last fight, it could be an interesting fight because Ansaroff is good on the feet. Obviously, we know training with her partner Amanda Nunes obviously helps with your stand-up game. But yeah, I don't think Suarez is a different beast to those 2 ladies. I mean, she took Kaspars down. I think it was 9 times in the last fight, UFC 228. I think she's going to be able to take Ansaroff down. I think she's going to be able to beat her up on the floor. I think she may even submit Ansaroff in this. I think she may just land that heavy ground and pound, force Ansaroff to turn her back and give up her back, and then maybe lock on a rear naked choke, similar to the Alexa Grasso fight. But yeah, I'm going with Suarez to continue the undefeated run and move to 8-0 with a stoppage victory.
Yeah, I agree. The line's wide, and rightly so. Suarez is an absolute monster in the women's strawweight division, and she's going to be almost impossible to beat with her style. And I think after she beats Nina Ansaroff in this fight, I think she's going to fight Jessica Andrade for the title, and she's got a really good chance of beating Andrade, and I'd be really interested to see that line as well. Wouldn't surprise me if she was favoured in that fight. But in this fight, her hands aren't the best, they're not that great, but she uses them well enough to close the distance, which is all she needs to do. Her entries for the takedowns are really good, chaining the takedowns from a single to a double to a body lock, just making sure that if there is some resistance, which you're going to get, the higher level competition that you face inside the UFC, when you're chaining those sort of takedowns, you're going to be able to get through any adversity of defense, and you're still going to be able to get the fight to the mat. She's a monster. She will get the fight to the mat in this fight. She'll spend a lot of time on top. She does enough for the referee not to stand them back up. She'll land ground and pound. She will make you turn your back. She will take a neck if it's there, and she could do this for 10 rounds if she wanted to. So 3 rounds is absolutely no problem for Suarez whatsoever. For Nina, I don't know how she wins this fight because I know how she wins this fight. She wins the fight by keeping it standing, but like you've mentioned with the comparisons with Khabib, you don't keep the fight standing with Khabib. You don't keep a fight standing with Suarez. I agree with you, John. I do think that Ansaroff is gonna put up quite a lot of resistance early on, especially on the mat, and just being gritty and resilient. But I think the longer the fight goes on, I think she's going to break. I think Suarez is going to land the ground and pound. I think Ansaroff is going to turn her back. I think Suarez is going to get a neck, and I think Suarez is going to choke her out. I've got Tatiana Suarez to win. I'm going to take her to win via submission. In the next quick fire fight, we've got Karolina Kowalkiewicz versus Alexa Grasso. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this one for me is quite a hard pick because Karolina Kowalkiewicz, I mean, we know she's on a bit of a decline, but when you look at her last 2 losses, they're against top competition. Jessica Andrade, obviously now the champion, Michelle Waterson, who is on the cusp of a title shot and fighting very well at the moment. But yeah, I think this fight is going to predominantly be a stand-up battle. My worry for Kowalkiewicz is her motivation and things. Now, she reminds me very much of a female version of Alexander Gustafsson.
I knew you were going to say that.
She seems to. It seems to be the title or nothing for her, and she has mentioned a couple of times over the last 12, 18 months about she's not going to be fighting forever. She wants to have a family. She wants to hang up the gloves. She doesn't want to go on too long and things like that. Grasso's 25 years old. She's an up-and-comer. I mean, it's going to be really close. And like I said, I think it's going to play out on the feet. Kowalkiewicz has all the tools to win this fight. Definitely, she's got good volume. She moves well. She throws in the kicks nice. She's very good in the clinch. But for me, the only factor as to whether she loses this fight is her motivation. But I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I think she'll want to get back in the win column. Her last 2 losses against tough opponents. Waterson was utilising that head and arm throw, and I don't think Grasso tried to take this fight to the mat. And I think it'll just remain standing. I do think it'll be quite close. I do think it'll go the distance, but I'm going with Karolina Kowalkiewicz to win this fight. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Grasso did win, though, because like I mentioned, I'm not sure where Kowalkiewicz's head is at right now and how much longer she's going to be in this sport. But I hope she sticks around. She's a good, fun fighter. But yeah, I'm going to go with her to win this fight. I think she's going to win a decision.
Yeah, I think Kowalkiewicz has peaked, man. I think she peaked quite a while ago, and every single time we seem to see her now, people are saying the same things, including myself. And we're sort of remembering what she used to be like. But the reality of it is, when you watch a recent fight, she is getting. She's on a decline. You can visibly see it. She's getting slightly worse each time out. And I'm not saying she's a bad fighter, but compared to where she was sort of 3-4 fights ago to where she is right now, like I say, there's an absolute noticeable difference. Now with Alexa Grasso, she seems to have had a lot of fights where because she's predominantly a striker, and she seems to have a lot of fights where she's put in there with fighters that will want to take her down at some point. Maybe not like relentless wrestlers, but just fighters that won't want to keep the fight standing for 15 minutes. And that's where she really falls apart, because she can't really let herself go in regards to her striking, because she's got the defensive wrestling and potential defensive grappling to worry about. Now, she's not a fighter that's also setting the world alight by any means, but like you say, she's a young fighter. She's still going to be developing, and the key thing in this fight is Kowalkiewicz is not going to want to take her down. Not because she doesn't want to, but that's just not a style. It's going to predominantly take place on the feet. I'd be very surprised if it hit the mat at all. So for that reason, I think that both fighters are going to get the fight that they want, but I just think the younger, hungrier Grasso is going to be a little better and a little sharper on the night with the fight that she wants, against, like what you mentioned, John, the less motivated Kowalkiewicz that is declining and maybe on her way out. So for those reasons, I'm going to take Alexa Grasso to win. I'm going to take her to win via decision. Now, in the next quick fire fight, we've got Ricardo Lamas versus Calvin Kattar. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is a good fight. Lamas is a guy that we thought was on his way out, 37 years old, losses to Josh Emmett, obviously that brutal loss to Emmett, and then lost to a split decision to Mirsad Bektic. Then he came back and defeated Darren Elkins with that nasty ground and pound, those brutal elbows, and finished him off going up against Calvin Kattar, who I'm a big fan of Kattar. I know we spoke about Kattar before, especially in his last fight against Fishgold. Kattar, he's going to have the advantage. He's standing up here. I think he's got good accurate strikes. He's got power in his hands. We saw that against Fishgold. We've seen it against Shane Burgos as well. Lamas, we know he's got a tremendous wrestling background. I think he will be able to take Kattar down, but I think Kattar will be able to get back to his feet. We did see that he was taken down as well against Fishgold. Fishgold got him down. So I do think that Lamas will be able to get him to the mat. But I do think Kattar will be able to get back to his feet, and I do think then he'll be able to land his strikes. And again, it wouldn't surprise me if Kattar put Lamas away in this fight. You know, I am a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of his striking. As I said, he's got heavy hands. If he can then get back to his feet, stuff a couple of the takedowns when they come, and then it predominantly just turns into a stand-up exchange. I think there's every chance that Kattar could catch Lamas with something and put him down. So for that reason, I'm going with Calvin Kattar to win this fight, and I think he stops Ricardo Lamas via strikes.
Yeah, I agree. Calvin Kattar is a standout wrestler back in high school, I believe. So that's going to play a huge part in this fight because where Lamas has success will be in the wrestling. I think he will try and take him down. Lamas will have nothing for Kattar on the feet. Kattar's sharp, he's accurate, he's got a good chin on him. He's got combinations. He can strike moving forwards, he can strike moving backwards. He's just a very, very solid fighter. Now, the other thing for Lamas is he's definitely on the decline. And again, it's something that's so noticeable when you watch tape on him. You look at his last fight against Darren Elkins. Yes, he got the finish. Yes, he got the win. But he just seems to be a step or two behind where he used to be, and like I say, it's very clear when you're watching recent tape in chronological order, because he's not as fast as he used to be, he's not as reactive as he used to be, nor is he proactive as he used to be. His volume isn't as great as what it used to be. Like I say, he does still have his wrestling, but is he really going to dump Kattar down 10 times in a fight? No. Is he really going to spend a minute on top of Kattar? No. So the fight is going to be won and lost on the feet. And like I say, even a prime Lamas would have trouble with this Kattar. But I do think with Lamas declined and a step or two behind where he used to be, I think he absolutely favours Kattar in this fight. I'm surprised he isn't a bigger favourite as well. I also think he knocks Lamas out. So I'm going Calvin Kattar to win. I'm going to take him to win by a knockout. Now, in your next quick fire fight, we've got Bevan Lewis versus Darren Stewart. John, who have you got?
Yeah, again, another really close fight and another difficult fight to pick. Bevan Lewis, I like the look of him against Uriah Hall, coming in, tough debut against a dangerous guy in Hall. Was piecing Hall up for 2 rounds, looked like he had good fight IQ, good distance management. He mixed things up a little bit in there as well. You could see he kind of played it by ear with his game plan, and he kind of tweaked a few things in there. But then he was got at, and Hall came back and finished him in round 3. Now, Darren Stewart's a guy that we know is heavy-handed, and he'll swing wildly and land bombs on you. Saw that in the Charles Bird fight, Eric Spicely. But again, he's also a guy that you can wear on in the clinch. You can take him down. He's taken down several times by Sharbazian. Sharbazian grinded him out in that fight. And yeah, you can get Darren Stewart. I mean, he's very aggressive. You can take him down when he's coming forward with that aggression. He leaves himself open. He's vulnerable sometimes to the submission, as we saw against Marquez and Carl Roberson. So yeah, it's a really tough fight. If Bevan Lewis fights for 3 rounds the way he did against Uriah Hall in those 2 rounds, I think that Lewis wins this fight. But as we saw that you can get him and you can land heavy strikes and put him away, I'm inclined to say that Stewart, as the underdog, can land something and hurt him and possibly put him away. But But yeah, I think I'm going to edge in the favour of Bevan Lewis. I did like the look of him. We've seen him on the Contender Series as well, put guys away. I did like his fight IQ. As I said, he'll be aware that Stewart has got a lot of power, so he'll play things sensibly. Maybe watch that Shahbazian fight and just wear on Stewart a little bit, take away some of that power in the early rounds. And yeah, so I think Bevan Lewis is going to win this fight. It could go the distance, or I wouldn't be surprised at all if he does finish him as well as the fight wears on, especially if Stewart starts winging some bombs, trying to land on Bevan Lewis and tires himself a bit. But for the sake of this podcast, I'm going to go with the decision victory for Bevan Lewis in this.
Yeah, I agree. Bevan Lewis is a good developing fighter. Well, really unlucky against Uriah Hall. He was absolutely piecing him up pretty much for the majority of the fight until he got caught. That's the nature of the sport, it happens. But he's going to learn from that, and he's also going to have developed since that fight as well. Darren Stewart, though, he's never a fighter that I like to pick against, just because he's so unpredictable. You don't know what you're going to get out of him on any particular night. He could come in and look like an absolute world beater, but then he can come in and look a little flat as well. So he's really unpredictable. You don't know what version of Darren Stewart's going to turn up, but the reality of it is he's got a good blast double leg takedown. He hits hard. He's got nice elbows. He's durable. He can go the distance. He's a good fighter, but I do have to favour the more technical fighter in this fight, the fighter that's going to land the more volume, the fighter that I believe is going to have more of an advantage the longer that the fight goes on, because I do think it hits the scorecards, and that fighter is Bevan Lewis. So for the reasons just mentioned, I think Bevan Lewis is going to win. I think he's going to win via decision. Now in the next fight, we've got Eddie Wineland versus the newcomer Grigory Popov. John, who have you got?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I haven't really seen a great deal of Grigory Popov. Seen bits and bobs here and there. He's coming into the UFC at 35 years old. He's another guy from Tiger Muay Thai that's competing in the UFC. From what I've seen, he's not an overly aggressive guy. I mean, he tends to counter strike, land ones and twos, and then only really attack you, put the pressure on you when he's hurt you with something. Eddie Wineland is an absolute veteran. I know he's lost 4 of his last 6 and his last 2 in a row, but they're against decent level competition in John Dodson and Alejandro Perez. I don't think he's done as well chin wise. I mean, he took some heavy shots on Dodson and Perez in those 2 fights, and still came out the other end of it and saw out a decision. It's mad to think that he's actually a year younger than Popov as well going into this fight. But yeah, I think for me, Wineland just is slightly more technical. He's got that UFC experience. He's hard to put away, and I just think he's going to be able to outstrike Popov in the stand-up exchanges. And I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a close fight. I haven't really seen a great deal of Popov, so he could come out and surprise me. Usually with these fights, when you've got guys like Wineland, veterans coming in off a couple of defeats, it's either a fight that the UFC knows they can get back in the win column with, or we see this new guy come in and completely knock him out cold. But I'm edging towards Wineland getting back in the win column in this fight, and I think he's going to take a decision.
Yeah, I like Wineland in this fight as well. I think it's a good fight for him. As for Popov, he's a fighter that I also think is going to be quite exciting as well. So, as you already mentioned, John, he's not overly aggressive, but he's very explosive. So, especially with his kicks, he's got hard low kicks, he's got hard body kicks, kicks to the head as well, front kicks, roundhouse kicks. He's also got a couple of Goga Plata submissions on his right now. He's not going to pull that sort of shit off in the UFC. That's more regional level stuff. Now, he's looked great in his previous, or most of his previous fights, but you've got to remember that he's fighting, cans out there, the fighters without good records, and it definitely plays a part when you're making a debut under the brightest lights of the sport against someone like Eddie Wineland. Now, the reason why I'm favouring Wineland a lot in this fight is because even though Popov's dangerous and he could put Wineland away, that's absolutely a possibility. Defensively, Wineland won't be happy going backwards. In fact, he won't go backwards. He'd rather meet you in the middle and throw down than go backwards. So because of that, he tends to make fighters go backwards themselves, his opponents. So with Popov, he's got literally no striking defense. I saw the same two, so the right cross get landed on him like 3 or 4 times in a row without setting up with a 1 in front of it. Like I said, it was just the 2 that landed like 3 or 4 times and connected 3 or 4 times as well. No defense. He also backs up in straight lines as well. Now Wineland uses angles really well, comes forward. He's a great striker. Now in this fight, I would really like to see him utilize his wrestling. He has got a wrestling background. We just don't see it. But again, like I've mentioned with the Ivanov fight earlier on, I can't be making assumptions about something that I'm not seeing. So I do think the fight's going to predominantly take place on the feet. I think that Wineland is going to be the one moving forwards the majority of the time. I think Popov's defense and his striking is pretty bad. I think there's a lot of holes in there. I think Wineland's going to definitely expose those holes. Again, moves well, is a moving target. I think it'll be hard for Popov to really start mounting volume in this fight. I think Wineland's going to finish him late. I think eventually those shots are going to start getting through, and he's going to find the jaw of Popov. He's going to drop him and finish him. So I've got Eddie Wineland to win. I'm going to take him to win via knockout. Now in the next quickfire fight, the last one, we've got Katlyn Chookagian versus Joanne Calderwood. John, who have you got?
Yeah, again, this seems to be the theme of the night, but another really close fight. I mean, a lot of people are saying we've seen JoJo 2.0 in there. We've seen in the last 2 fights against Kalindra Farrier and Ariane Lipski. Just utilise a really different game plan and show off how well-rounded she's becoming. Obviously, we saw the fantastic work on the bottom against Farrier with getting the win via the triangle armbar. Then Lipski, everyone was high on Lipski coming in. I think we both picked Lipski to win that fight, if I remember correctly. And JoJo came in and did some good work and utilised her wrestling as well. Obviously, we know she's got that good, solid Muay Thai background, good knees, good elbows, dangerous on the feet. I think she'll have more output against Chookagian. Chookagian likes to pop the jab. Obviously, we know she likes to make a lot of noise when she's throwing strikes, and she just looks busy. I think that's why she edges so many of these very close decisions. She always looks busy in there, and obviously when she's shouting as she's throwing those strikes and she's looking busy, it looks as though sometimes she's doing more work than she actually is. I think she, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, I think it was the right decision that she lost against Jessica Eye. But yeah, I think if Calderwood mixes in the takedown or even the threat of the takedown in this fight, I think she'll come out victorious. I think that she has the higher output and volume on the feet. I think she probably has the better overall technique standing as well. If you're mixing everything, knees, elbows, kicks, and obviously the punches. Chookagian does have a good crisp jab. But yeah, if Calderwood mixes in that takedown as well, I think she'll be able to keep Chookagian guessing then with the stand up, and I think she'll be able to put a bit of a volume on her. And again, I think it's a fight that will go to a decision. But I'm taking JoJo Calderwood to win this fight via decision.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a really good fight because, again, both fighters are going to get the fight that they want. So, Katlyn Chookagian predominantly fights on the back foot, counter striking, and Joanne Calderwood likes to move forward. So they're both going to get the fight they want, like I've already mentioned. Now, it was a little surprising to see that Chookagian is going to have a height and reach advantage over Joanne Calderwood. I thought they would be around the same height, and that could play a part in this fight because Chookagian, if she uses a range, manages a distance, stays on the back foot, pops the jab out, keeps on the outside, circling, angling, exits, all that, she can have a lot of success against Calderwood and potentially frustrate Calderwood. Also, Calderwood's very hittable as well, and that's something else that you've got to take note of in this fight. However, I do think that if Calderwood is quick, moving forward and cutting off those angles and just getting inside and really working inside more often than not in this fight, she is going to win this fight, and I do think that's a massive possibility. I also agree that she could start shooting for takedowns as well, trying to get Chookagian on her back, but she does have to be careful because Chookagian is a Renzo Gracie brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so she's absolutely no slouch on the mat. Joanne Calderwood does have to be careful if she's going down that route. But ultimately, I think the fight is going to be won and lost based on damage and volume. I think the volume is going to be relatively close, but I think the damage is going to be done by Joanne Calderwood. I think the forward pressure is going to be Joanne Calderwood. That's something else that will stand her in good stead in the judges' eyes. So for that reason, I think that a few slight factors are going to play a part on the winner and the loser of this fight. I think those slight factors edge towards Calderwood. I think Joanne Calderwood's going to win. I think she's going to win via decision. And that's it for this week's podcast, guys. So, John, before we hit the Newsome MMA mentions, what do you need to mention, man?
Yeah, just as always, man, check out the Newsome MMA website. We've got some fantastic stuff on there, especially the YouTube channel. If you don't subscribe to that already, subscribe. We've got a lot more than just this podcast on there. We've had some great interviews over the last few weeks. Joe Giannetti, obviously ahead of his fight in a couple of weeks' time at Cage Titans. Just interviewed Zach Cummings, obviously coming off the win in Rochester. Yeah, man, we're going global with it right now, and yeah, hopefully in the next week or so, I'll have something a bit different for you with Bellator middleweight standout Fabian Edwards, so keep an eye out for that as well. And then just hit me up on Twitter as always at MMA and me. Always happy to talk fights. Always happy to talk anything MMA related. I'll always hit that follow back button if you're an MMA fan as well. So yeah, make sure you catch me on there as well at MMA and me.
Awesome stuff, man. Now for the Newsome MMA mentions. First of all, I want to mention the Newsome MMA website too. Don't forget to visit the website at newsomemma.co.uk, where you'll find my MMA betting section, which will provide written betting advice for some of the fights that were in the quickfire round in this podcast. You'll also find the locally famous tape index feature, prediction videos, fighter interviews, and the content collaboration with Heavy Duty Fight Management too. You can even request colour commentary and media coverage from Newsome MMA as well. The next mention is the long-term sponsor of Newsome MMA, CBD Life UK. CBD is an amazing product and something that I use every day myself. Thousands of professional athletes also use CBD too, and at CBD Life UK they've got a wide variety of products to suit the needs of any customer. You can go to cbdlifeuk.com and use promo code Newsome MMA to get 15% off your order. And finally, you'll be seeing the logo of MMA Play 365 circling social media very soon. Without giving too much away right now, MMA Play 365 is a brand new betting advice platform that is going to be launched very soon. It's a unique platform and it'll offer a selection of betting services under one subscription. It also has a huge backing too, so keep your eyes out for MMA Play 365. And that's it from us, guys. There's now a 1 week break for UFC, so enjoy the card on Saturday night and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.